The CNBC app. Global market news in one place. Customizable sections and personalized alerts. Stocks tracking, interactive charts and market insights all in your hands. Stay connected. Stay informed. Download the CNBC app today.
A very warm welcome to Squawk Box Europe on this Friday, where the news gods continue to deliver a plenty. We'll give you that over the next 3 hours. I'm Steve Sedgwick with Karen Cho and Ben Bullos and Ian King, and these are your headlines. UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's leadership comes under even more scrutiny as Labour finishes a distant third in the Gorton and Denton by-election behind a victorious Green Party and indeed the Reform Party as well.
The series finale, Netflix ditches its acquisition deal for Warner Brothers Discovery, refusing to match Paramount's amended offer of $31 per share for the entire portfolio. Netflix shares jump on the decision to walk away.
A senior Pentagon official describes Anthropic CEO as a liar with a god complex as that war of words between the US government and AI giant continues to escalate. And another credit cockroach, Barclays and Santander reportedly among the major lenders with millions in exposure to a collapsed UK private mortgage provider facing allegations of fraud. Well, it was certainly closely watched, and the Green Party candidate Hannah Spencer has won the Gorton and Denton parliamentary by-election, taking what was considered a safe seat from the governing Labour Party in a fresh blow to the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Labour finished in third place with 26% of the vote, well behind the Greens tally of 41%. The right-wing party Reform UK also outperformed the Prime Minister's party, coming in second place with 29% of the vote. Speaking after her victory, Spencer said her constituents are sick of being let down.
Working hard used to get you something. It got you a house, a nice life, holidays. It got you somewhere. But now, working hard, what does that get you? Because talk to anyone here and they will tell you. The people who work hard but can't put food on the table, can't get their kids' school uniforms, can't put their heating on, can't live off the pension they worked hard to save for, can't even begin to dream about ever having a holiday, ever. Because life has changed. Instead of working for a nice life, we're working to line the pockets of billionaires. We are being bled dry. People in their thousands told me on the doorsteps and at the ballot box that what we are sick of is being let down and looked down on. That we are sick of our hard work making other people rich.
Well, Ian King joins us now. A plumber, a plasterer, and she's now a parliamentarian. And
why would she give up a perfectly good couple of jobs to become a parliamentarian?
It's the future, isn't it? Portfolio careers. That's what everyone's
skill set she's going to require. All of those background,
political
plastering something together, plumbing something together.
Absolutely. If ever we needed
a perfectly good job to become an MP. She could probably earn more as a plumber as well, couldn't she?
Well, there was a lot of... She probably could. The pension would be better as an MP, though. Don't forget they have a final salary pension scheme in Westminster. I mean,
but one of them, you're having to deal with more sewage. And it ain't plumbing.
Yes, let the viewers decide that one for themselves, Steve. Yeah. I mean, look, she did cast herself as a sort of every man, every woman candidate. In fact, it turns out that she comes from a very, very political family in which her mother and several of her siblings have stood in various parliamentary and council by-elections. So she's not quite the sort of every woman candidate that she appears to be. But look, this is a disaster for Keir Starmer's government. It really is. This is the sixth safest Labour seat in the land, and I think a lot of Labour MPs this morning will be waking up, surveying the result here and thinking, crikey, well, I'm in real danger of losing my seat. In terms of the markets, I think this is as market unfriendly a result as you could possibly have, and indeed we've already seen a sell-off in UK gilts because there's been this big internal debate within the Labour Party. Obviously, they've got Reform UK to the right of them, peeling off votes from white working class traditional Labour voters. That certainly happened in this by-election. But now on the left, you've got the Green Party nipping at their heels. The Green Party, they're green in name only really now. Their policy prospectus is really of the sort of hard left variety that Jeremy Corbyn took Labour in back in 2019. They're in favour of wholesale renationalisation of assets, massive expansion in borrowing, in public spending, very, very market unfriendly. There will be a lot of people within the Labour Party right now, as I say, particularly some of their own MPs, who will say to Keir Starmer, you've got to tack to the left to head these people off. And that potentially, as I say, is not very good news for the markets.
Yeah, and that's the point, isn't it? Because the direction that the Labour Party goes, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, he's been, and the Chancellor, have been under pressure from backbenchers who would prefer to see a more further left agenda. They've had to row back on things like cuts to welfare reforms, big headline proposals that do affect the economy. Do we get a sense of how much pressure there'll now be from those further left backbenchers?
Well, there'll also be an argument that, don't forget, Keir Starmer stopped Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, from standing. And the view is that possibly with Burnham, they might have won.
Can we just go through what she said again about billionaires? I don't know. Have we got? Listen to this again, because this has got me frothing. Whilst I agree with a lot of what she said about the dysfunction in Parliament, let's listen to Hannah Spencer again.
Working hard used to get you something. It got you a house, a nice life, holidays. It got you somewhere. But now, working hard, what does that get you? Because talk to anyone here and they will tell you. The people who work hard but can't put food on the table, can't get their kids' school uniforms, can't put their heating on, can't live off the pension they worked hard to save for, can't even begin to dream about ever having a holiday, ever. Because life has changed. Instead of working for a nice life, we're working to line the pockets of billionaires. We are being bled dry. People in their thousands told me on the doorsteps and at the ballot box that what we are sick of is being let down and looked down on, that we are sick of our hard work making other people rich.
Look, I actually agree with 90% of what she said, but the bit about billionaires is palpable nonsense. I agree that working class people and middle class people are finding it harder than ever to make ends meet. I see it, I have normal friends, I understand it, I get it. But when I say normal, I don't just hang around with the... No, but I hang out with people who stand in the pub or in the coffee shop having this conversation as well. I don't live in some ivory towered city base. But the bit about the billionaires is palpable nonsense. Yeah. Palpable nonsense. The billionaires have gone, by the way, Hannah. I don't know if you noticed, but they can all go to Monaco, they can all go to Jersey, they can all go to the Isle of Man, they can go to Milan, they can go wherever they like. It's nonsense to say that you're lining the pockets of the billionaires as well.
But it's class warfare, isn't it?
That's what it sounds like,
warfare
Karen, yes.
coming back, and that's where it gets interesting. Yeah. Because who wins on the back of it? We know taxation in this country is extremely high. Yeah. If we start counting down to the next major by-election, next major election, what does it mean in terms of who cleans up?
Yeah, I mean, this really does, Karen, speak to the fact that this is a Green Party in name only now. This is a hard left party, and I think people need to get their head around that. The other thing I would say about this by-election is that there's a really quite sinister sectarian element to the way that the Greens were campaigning here. The Green Party were putting out leaflets in Urdu. Hannah Spencer did an entire broadcast in Urdu on social media. You had Green Party leaflets with Keir Starmer pictured with Narendra Modi, with David Lammy, the Deputy Prime Minister, being pictured with Benjamin Netanyahu. This is sectarian politics, and a third of the constituency is Muslim. This parliamentary by-election, not to put too fine a point on it, has been decided in no small part by voters' opinions or a large portion of the electorate on something that's going on 2,500 miles away from the UK. It's a very, very sinister development. We've seen it in the UK we had 4 so-called Gaza independents elected at the last general election. This is, as I say, this is sectarian campaigning that we haven't seen in this country outside of parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland ever.
Ian, that is fascinating. We do appreciate the coverage this morning. Thank you so much. And let's push on to markets and what we saw on the back of the action stateside. Don't forget, it was all about NVIDIA, the big macro event that is the reporting from the big chip giant. And what we witnessed was that markets peeling away in different directions. The Dow was again supported, but we saw selling on the Nasdaq down to the tune of more than 1%. Big moving names. It was, of course, NVIDIA. That was the stock to the downside, dragging the Nasdaq lower, but also the likes of the S&P 500. We saw that. And the wash-up was, look, the performance of the stock, what it reported, all that bright news that it had around the demand story was not enough to move the needle on the stock, as still we have these fears around valuations in the market, whether there's going to be large-scale disruption, and markets have turned cautious around some of these AI names. And let's just take stock of the month that we've had. February has been eventful, I think we all agree. There's been so much news over the course of the month. Plug a lot of tariffs, geopolitics into the mix, the roller coaster around the obsolescence story in AI, and this was the wash-up. You've got the likes of the Nasdaq down to the tune of about 2.5%, outsized falls versus the S&P down about 0.5%. It was really up to the Dow to do some heavy lifting and performance, up more than 1%. But you compare and contrast that to the European markets, which we'll take a look at the moment. This is where the diversification has happened. It's been a real bright spot as we look to wrap up the trading session today. You can see we're getting set for more gains on the FTSE that has called high. And this has been one of the better trading brackets where you've seen the FTSE 100 again soaring up to the tune of more than 6% in the trading month. That's 6% up on the FTSE 100. It's 6% up on the French stock market. Don't forget, one of the laggards in Europe last year versus selling on the Nasdaq, the preferred trade, down 2.5% for the month. So real bifurcation you've seen in those markets.
Bob Parker is Senior Advisor at the International Capital Markets Association. Bob, lovely to see you.
Morning.
I'm going to ask you a question. You've only got 3 answers, so there might be something else. State of the Union, NVIDIA, or actually the Denton and Gorton. What is the most interesting piece of news for you this week?
I think the very interesting news is actually, number one, geopolitics, what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening in oil markets. Are we going to get a spike in oil prices and the implications for markets?
That's interesting. You've chosen oil markets rather than those other factors. Talk me through that.
If we get a spike in oil prices, which I think if we do, it's only going to be very temporary. But obviously, investors are very nervous about what's going on in the Middle East, and with some justification. And the big risk is that if we get more than a temporary spike in oil markets, that clearly has inflationary expectations, and also it has a negative impact on global growth and therefore a negative impact on global markets. And today, obviously, here sitting in London, there is a lot of focus on UK politics. I think at the risk of being rather sort of superficial, I suspect that's actually noise rather than actually what are the real factors in markets at the moment.
Well, what sort of spike would make a difference, though? Because you keep in mind just how low we got over the past 12 months.
Correct.
We're now around the 65 handle on WTI. The high point was closer to about $87. So there's still a lot of headroom for any spike.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Well, I think a key point is that oil markets generally, and you can make the same comment about gas markets as well, we are in very significant surplus. And if you look at the data that's produced by the IEA, it's entirely possible that we will have a surplus of well above 3 million barrels per day going into the second half of this year. So that surplus overhangs the market, which is why I think any oil price spike will probably be temporary. But clearly investors are nervous about geopolitics at the moment, and it could have a negative impact on markets. So it's a risk factor we need to look at.
But we've got a line in the space these days, and that is Donald Trump. I'm not talking about the Saudis. I mean, the president has been very active wanting prices at the pump, gasoline prices, to be much lower for Americans.
Correct.
Arguably, the Venezuelan policy, what you're seeing elsewhere around the world, all designed to get the price moving to a lower bar.
Yes.
What makes you think that he would allow that to get away from him?
Well, I think he clearly has a political agenda with Iran. That political agenda comes with a cost. My own view is that cost will probably be very short term. Coming back to your observation about Venezuela, the impact on oil markets, frankly, is going to be zero because Venezuelan oil infrastructure has been severely damaged over the last 20 years. It's going to take a very long time to boost Venezuelan output. But, to come back to your comment and Steve's question, one factor which we need to look at for the next week or two is what is the risk of an oil price spike and the contagion effects on markets.
Bob, just to get sort of a bigger picture take on the rotation we're seeing, Karen was going through the markets, the monthly performance,
yes.
And it's the Dow that's doing the heavy lifting. And I wonder if you see that as further evidence of this rotation out of tech, despite a month where Nvidia's reported absolutely stonking numbers in its results.
Right. Well, the Nvidia numbers obviously were very positive, and they were, if anything, better than really quite optimistic expectations. Having said that, I think the important question is: will this rotation out of the US into Europe, into Asia, particularly just focus on what's happened to the Nikkei in the last couple of months as well as one of the strongest markets worldwide, and also the outperformance of emerging equity markets versus developed markets. So you've had that geographic move in investor flows out of the States. You've also had sectoral and style changes and rotation as well into value sectors, into defensive sectors. And that's against a background of obviously if we had this conversation back in early January, where the US tech sector was the most crowded trade on any survey, and the valuations were very expensive. So we're now seeing, I think, that inevitable shift. Will it continue? My view is yes, it will, and it could easily continue for the rest of this year.
A theme that feels that it was gathering momentum this week, two separate reports, both in the FT, one about Moody's warning about loopholes in the way that big tech companies are financing their expansion, and then a further article where this existence of special purpose vehicles to fund borrowing against the value of the chips.
Yes.
And the concerns around, is that something that you think is a cause for concern that could continue to grow?
Well, this loops back into another risk factor which we need to look at, which is what is happening in credit markets. And the use of special purpose vehicles is one example of lower credit standards. And over the last few weeks, we've had some incidents, and what's happening, for example, in the States with the Blue Owl funds. Here, more recently in the UK with MFS, that default. And I think we have clearly seen some deterioration in credit markets. That's not yet reflected in credit spreads. They're still very tight indeed. And one risk factor that we need to look at is what is the probability of credit spreads widening? What is the risk of sort of further default or debt restructuring incidents in credit markets? And again, what's the contagion effect on markets? So again, that's one factor which we need to look at.
Bob, tell me a little bit about the ramifications of Denton and Gorton. I know that you said it's quite parochial and it's kind of for our UK audience and interested, but bear with me on this one. There are longer term concerns about the gilt markets, and of course the Truss incident was a great case in point when it acts as a warning for many political parties, not only in the UK but around the world, saying if you go too far on unfunded spending plans, then there's going to be a problem. Hannah Spencer, again, I thought a lot of what she said was sense, some of it strange, but basically appears, according to Ian, to be pretty much hard left. It's Corbynista almost. I heard on the radio she's socialist rather than hard left, but we'll go with it.
Yes.
If that means the Labour tax to the left, are there really longer term concerns that we should start looking at UK assets in a different way?
If there is a shift to the left, and there was actually some recent work done which I thought was quite interesting, trying to model the impact on the gilt market if we had a change in Labour leadership. And admittedly, this model comes out with a high degree of forecasting error, but one conclusion was if you, for example, had Angela Rayner replacing Keir Starmer as Prime Minister, the model showed that perhaps 10-year gilt yields could rise between 60 and 80 basis points. Now, if you have 10-year gilt yields going from where we are at the moment at around 4.3% back towards 5%, it's very obvious what that does to the FTSE, and particularly to actually the FTSE 250 and to the small cap sectors. And there would obviously be a serious negative effect. So
that's a warning sign.
Correct. Absolutely. If you take this by-election result as pushing the Labour Party more towards the left, there is obviously a lot of speculation as to whether Starmer will be replaced. I would emphasise how difficult it is actually to go through the process of replacing Starmer, and my central case is actually he'll still be in place for some time. But if you do get a shift to the left as Labour perceives the Green Party to be a greater threat than reform. The truth is both are a threat. But if you do get a shift to the left, that will be immediately reflected in gilt yields, and obviously that has implications for the FTSE, which, by the way, has been one of the best performing markets in the last month.
As it has been, that's 6% it's been
yes.
up on the FTSE 100, and you've seen the FTSE 250 performing too. Thank you so much, Bob.
Thank
Bob
you.
Park with our Senior Advisor, International Capital Markets Association. The recent sell-off in software names after Anthropic's Claude announcements have sparked fears about the future of the sector, as well as what the future of the global workforce may look like. We've spoken to a number of executives from software as well as recruitment companies this week, and they gave their take on how AI could shape their business.
We're using these advanced technologies, which I do believe will be a benefit to the workflow of our customers going forward, but we're using them with our expert curated content that our professionals have relied on for many, many, many years. And I think that is the key to the future of Wolters Kluwer, combining that expert know-how, that deep domain expertise, and then applying those technologies.
How do you make sure that you strategize your workforce when the workforce becomes hybrid with people working alongside agents? And that's what our potential, this joint venture is about. It's to help guide and drive the efforts of our clients exactly to the point where they can scale nicely the agents, but make sure that the people are ready for that.
These are big banks, big asset managers that are looking to have access to our data for up to 7 years. They understand our business really well. They understand their needs. They understand the direction of travel in terms of the AI. We're seeing through partners like Claude and ChatGPT, financial customers accessing our data with an LSEG license, but through those channels. And it's growing really, really quickly. So we see that as a great new distribution channel, not a disruptor.
Lots of questions for our next guest as we talk about disruption, obsolescence questions around software. Now, Pearson missed expectations for its full-year revenue, posting $3.5 billion. The company says it is targeting mid-single-digit sales growth this year. Omar Abosh joins us now, the CEO of Pearson. Omar, thank you so much for joining us. Your sector's never been more interesting. I was looking at the shareholding, about a third of the stock now held by activists. So a lot of pressure even before we talk about the meltdown that's happened to the stock market this month. Just tell us how things stand. Are you seeing disruption from AI?
Well, I'm going to get up with the financial markets this morning and say three things to them. Firstly, we're extremely confident about the future of Pearson for two reasons. One, that AI is an enormous tailwind for our business. And second, because of the unique characteristics of our business model. Secondly, we're going to reflect on 2025, which is a good year of financial and strategic progress. We delivered 4% growth in net revenues, 6% increase in operating profit, and 8% in free cash flows last year with conversion at 125%. So that was a pretty good year. And a lot of progress under the hood strategically as well. And then we're guiding to this year for mid-single digit growth, like you said. So I feel very good about 2026 and looking forward.
The questions are not necessarily about the near term. They're about the moat and how big that moat remains, whether with all the summaries out there, with all of the analytics we can now use combined with agentic, whether you do have a moat. Get into the weeds for us. How is your moat protected at this point as you look out into the future?
Well, there are two reasons why I feel very strongly about the future for Pearson. The first one is AI, as you know, is driving a reconfiguration of jobs. And every CEO I talk to around the world understands that there is no future positive AI scenario without an incredible focus on human learning. So we're seeing incredible demand for reskilling. And in fact, we inked 9 big contracts with some of the world's best technology companies last year, specifically for what Pearson does to help them with reskilling. With regards to our business model, let me sort of say a couple of things about Pearson. 80% of our profit stream comes from assessments and virtual schools. In some countries, print is still going to be a factor for a while to go, and that adds another 10% to the operating profit. So 90% of Pearson profit comes from operationally very complex, human-led, very advanced services in regulated markets. So let me characterize that. That work requires biometric and physical security. It requires supply chain of custody of assessments and incident response. It requires psychometric and statistical demonstration of efficacy that you can stand up and defend, sometimes in a court of law and often in a regulatory audit. And it relies on a level of operational excellence that moves tens of millions of people, scheduling and capacity management through about 20,000 network of physical facilities around the world. I spent 35 years in tech before I joined Pearson. What I just described, you cannot do with a plugin. The last 10% of Pearson's operating profit comes from digital courseware. Digital courseware in higher ed and in English language institutional. Again, that work is incredibly deeply embedded in the world's educational systems. You have embeddedness by integrations with learning management systems and school information systems. You have embeddedness with professors along their assignments and assessments. And you, of course, have Pearson's decades of longitudinal data sets, proprietary content and interaction data between instructions and learners that we use to ground our models. So every time the AI labs put out some incredible new features, which I love, we use those features to ground our models and deliver excellent outcomes for learners. And we can demonstrate efficacy with our assets in that space as well. So like I said, I feel very good about the future.
Omar, it's Ben joining the conversation here. We spoke to another company that is very big on the data side of things earlier in the week about the threat from AI. And the response came that what preserves your model is trust from people. Pearson was fined £2 million for breaches of standards that could affect tens of thousands of students. What can you say to reassure people that the steps you've taken to address that and that there is still trust in the organisation?
Actually, what I was saying, Ben, is that the business model that I'm describing, the level of operational excellence required, is 1,000% dependent on an incredible level of trust. What people don't often see is quite how unique Pearson's characteristics are. There are literally 2 or 3 companies in the entire world that can do what we do, which is precisely why we are so trusted. When I run around the world meeting customers, actually, I was astonished. I came from Microsoft before this, which is an amazing company. I was astonished at the level of trust that Pearson has held in the eyes of its customers. And customers literally use the phrases to me like, you are the gold standard in our space. And so I feel very good about that. Now, we're never complacent. We always know we can improve. The fines that you referred to obviously are hurtful. They dated back to 2019 to 2022, so it was a little bit before my time. But we're incredibly focused on excellence of operational performance, standards of what we deliver, and being able to prove how important what we do is. In an AI world, and you know this very well, Ben, with deep fakes, with fake identities, with an amazing amount of AI-generated content that you can't really tell how good or bad it is, we're seeing a big push in the world towards trusted, authoritative sources like us, and even in the world of assessments, where Pearson's core capability is being the verification infrastructure for human skills, we're seeing a pushback to more physical, more human-led proctoring, because people really want to know that the person doing surgery on them is actually qualified, and that's what we specialize in.
I know how important the US market is to Pearson. We've seen the ups and downs with the tariffs in the past 7 days. How much of that is affecting you? What are you doing to position to account for all of that?
Pearson, as you know, has about 70% of its revenues in the US. Obviously, a lot of the materials that we produce are primarily digital. And so when we're running physical test centers in a place like the US, you have them physically there. So we employ about 6,000 people in America. We invest about £1.5 billion a year in America. And so in America, we are American. And the tariff rules haven't encompassed or haven't covered most of what we do. So far, it's been completely fine.
Omar, I'm really sorry, but I'm just not buying the fact that we shouldn't all be terrified about the jobs picture as well. You know as well as I do that there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of professionals who use your amazing products who might not be using the products because AI is destroying their livelihood. And if it hasn't destroyed it now, it's set to destroy it as well. I can give you hundreds of examples of legal professionals just looking in horror as billable hours just get shrunk. I found one on Lawline, for instance, 10 hours of legal work compressed into 45 minutes. We should all be very, very concerned about the jobs because, Omar, the jobs aren't going to be there if that kind of speed of AI application is replicated.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to speculate, but let me tell you things that we do know, and then maybe a couple of things that we're not sure about. What we do know is that a lot of the narrative that you're talking about, the sort of AI-driven job doomerism, is coming from Silicon Valley. And it's coming, and these are excellent, wonderful people. I love them. I know a lot of them very, very well. But some of them are pitching the story because they need to pitch their own book. In other words, I am building super intelligence. You should fund me by tens of billions or hundreds of billions of dollars so I can build out these massive data centers. So that story is very clear. The other story is actually, which is very real, is if you're a software engineers are genuinely shocked at how capable these models are at doing what they do or how they used to do it. And I think too often the world is linearly extrapolating and saying, well, if I can use Claude Code or Codex 5.3 to do coding very differently, like 10x faster than I used to do it, then that is going to translate to every other job in the world. I don't buy that. I think the rate of diffusion is going to be a bit more complex than people make out. Actually, what I can tell you about Pearson is that those exact same tech companies that you're telling me you're worried about are coming to us and saying, help us train our sellers on our latest AI. Help us train our customers on our latest AI. And we're seeing a giant growth in demand
Omar,
for all of that. Actually, yeah, I was just going to say, in the past, when markets turned down, just without AI, people actually needed to go reskill. And that we are seeing that in our business as well.
There will be no reskilling if we, well, oh yeah, sure, we can all work in the care industry and look after people in homes and everything as well. But Jack Dorsey has just come out. I mean, I don't know if you saw the Block announcement. Jack Dorsey came, and
it's mainly a software company.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, I won't do that. I'll talk about the lawyers then. Okay, oh, you're right. I'll forget about that. What about the lawyers? The lawyers are turning 100 billable hours into about, I don't know, let's say 5 hours work kind of thing. That is an Armageddon for lawyers, not for technical people, not for technologists.
Listen, I mean, I'm not in any way understating the importance of the AI reconfiguration of jobs. The two things I'll point out. A lot of this is unknowable. In the past, when we invented the automotive car, all the people who worked in the horse and buggy industry were put out of work, and then they repurposed into something else. There have been tons of examples of that in history, when the Minnesotan ice farmers were put out of work because of refrigeration and electricity.
Omar.
Yeah. So with the lawyers, when the price goes down for the unit, you'll say, okay, what happens to the price of expertise? Typically what happens is, as long as there's latent demand, demand explodes. This is like this Jevons paradox problem. You can't actually predict what future demand is. If there is demand for lawyering, we're going to end up just doing more lawyering. It may be cheaper per unit, but you'll do more overall.
With less lawyers, Omar. There won't be the need. Okay, here's what I want to know. And no one has given me a great answer on this one in the 5 years I've been asking the question. Show me the jobs. I'm quoting Mr. Cooper Jr. here. Show me. Everyone says there's going to be replacement jobs. Show me the jobs. Show me the jobs for my children, for Karen's children, for all of our children. What are they? Because I see graduates pleading with me all the time for a bit of work experience or a bit of internship because the jobs aren't there.
So listen, I've got two young boys who are high school and university, so I feel exactly what you're talking about. One of the things that we've seen is that AI has killed the CV or the resume, because what's happening is kids right now are firing off resumes to 10,000 companies built by AI, and those resumes are being read by AI. So you've got bots talking to bots, and so that system is broken down. So there's no question that we're in a moment of reconfiguration where we need to rethink how things are going to play out. But if you go back to 1980 and ask yourself, what is a web designer? You would never have heard of that. What is a mobile phone component manufacturer? You would never have heard of it. It's very hard to see the jobs that are going to come, and it's very easy to see the jobs that will go away. And so, again, I'm not making light of it. I think the world has a choice. It is up to us. We don't have to accept an AI job apocalypse. It's up to us as leaders to take the lead and say, all right, how do we manage this in a proper transition? I mean, you've seen people like Jamie Dimon talk about the need for companies and governments to really think carefully about the policy around this, I think that is right.
I love this conversation with you, sir, and we need to have it. So thank you so much indeed for, A, presenting the Pearson numbers, and B, having this very important conversation. We appreciate it, Omar. First time I think I've spoken to you, and I've enjoyed it very much. Omar Abosh, who is the CEO of Pearson.
Don't go away, we'll be back in just a few minutes, and we'll be looking ahead to the European market open in just under half an hour from now. We're looking at a slightly positive session at the beginning of Friday.
Executive Decisions is the new podcast from CNBC, where I ask powerful leaders about their decisions that changed everything. I'm Steve Sedgwick. Here's Miss Jo Malone, CBE.
I started that first business of skincare. That's when I knew that I was in charge of my own life. And that's when the entrepreneur really, although I didn't know what the word entrepreneur meant, that's when the entrepreneur really took hold.
That's Executive Decisions with me, Steve Sedgwick. Get it wherever you're listening to this. Oh, we're still chatting about jobs in the break. Meanwhile, Squawk Box Europe is on. We have to get back to that. I'm Steve Sedgwick with Karen Cho and Ben Boulos, and these are your headlines. UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's leadership comes under even more scrutiny, if that was at all possible, as Labour finishes a distant third in the Gorton and Denton by-election behind a victorious Green Party and Reform UK. The series finale, I see what you did there. Netflix ditches its acquisition deal for Warner Bros. Discovery, refusing to match Paramount's amended offer of $31 per share for the entire portfolio. Netflix shares jump on the decision to walk away. What does that say about the price? A senior Pentagon official describes Anthropic CEO as a liar with a God complex. Wow. As the war of words between the US government and the AI giant continues to escalate. And another credit cockroach. That's a question, by the way. Barclays and Santander reportedly amongst the major lenders with millions in exposure to a collapsed UK private mortgage provider facing allegations of fraud.
Well, turning to the other big story that has percolated again this month, and that is tariffs, as the French Trade Minister Nicolas Fauricier has told CNBC that he held constructive discussions with his US counterparts earlier this week over tariffs. He added that Europe had some, quote, tough decisions to make and urged the continent to not be naive. Well, Charlotte joins us with more from that interview. Charlotte, I was looking at some of the French numbers, and what a third of French-US trade has really been in the crosshairs, this friction that has been ongoing.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why you have all these conversations now. President Macron over the weekend talking about how France will be analysing and adapting to the potential new regime there after that Supreme Court decision. So, all the talks are happening now. And of course, France is chairing the G7 this year. There was a very first trade G7 meeting earlier this week. And Nicolas Fauricier, the Minister Delegate for Foreign Trade, said that the talks with Jamieson Greer, his US counterpart, were constructive. But of course, they are still waiting to have some visibility. So when I had a chance to catch up with the Minister, Nicolas Fauricier, I asked him about the impact of these tariffs and the impact of this uncertainty on the French economy.
What is important in economy in general and in trade in particular is to have predictability. And so we are fighting with that. This is our position inside the European Union discussions, in the trade committees, for example. It's our position as chairs of the G7. We're trying to push for some instruments that will guarantee the predictability to the companies. And of course, it's a question in France regarding the political situation. But I will let you notice that the budgets have been adopted in France, that we now know that we have until the next elections in 27, something like a year and a half of predictability, a period during which the government and the Prime Minister is very firmly asking for that, during which the government will work in a useful way for the country and economy, especially in trying to improve our efforts in terms of public spendings, for example. So the predictability of French economy is quite good, and it's reinforcing what was the situation during the last years. I remind you that for the sixth year consecutive, France has been the first destination for international investment in Europe. We are the first destination, and we are going on. So the situation, the economy, the economical situation, the growth of our economy is not bad at all. We are in good shape. So it's right. I mean, the predictability of France in terms of foreign investment, in terms of growth, in terms of political situation is now far better for the coming years.
Well, it is, I guess, the political situation is clearer, especially since having the budget, and yet we don't know who might be leading France in just over a year. And then the situation, it seems unclear on that front. Some polls showing that maybe the far right could be in the lead. So I just want to ask you, because part of your job, I guess, to pitch France as an investment destination. Do you hear any concern from foreign investors potentially investing in France, given that this uncertainty of who might be leading France in just over a year?
I think that the elections in all democratic countries are the same. It's always creates some uncertainty. But I think that the investors, what they are looking first is the capacity of the French economy, the infrastructures, the capacity of the employment and the quality of the employees. These are the real subjects they are looking for. The fact that you will have a new president is not, to my opinion, the first priority when they analyze the situation. They make their investment in terms of interest for the company. France is very well situated. It's the center of Europe in a way, and of a large region. It's the access to the first market in the world, which is the European market. And we have very good equipments, very good attractivity.
And that was Nicolas Forissier, the Minister Delegate for Foreign Trade for France, and someone, of course, has been talking earlier in the week about the impact of tariffs and how Europe has the potential tools, including the anti-coercion instrument, if necessary, but that for now, the talks are constructive and try to get a unified European position that Chancellor Merz will be defending when in his trip to Washington in early March.
Yeah, I've had a brilliant idea. Why don't we break down the internal barriers, then we can actually trade with ourselves? Nah, that sounds silly. OK, let's move on. Thank you, Charlotte. The clock is ticking for Anthropic to comply with demands from the Pentagon to ease its usage restrictions, with the Defence Secretary, Pete Hegseth, setting a Friday evening deadline in a dispute that has rumbled on for weeks. Now let's take a closer look at what's been going on. The Pentagon has been locked in discussions with the $380 billion AI group, demanding that Anthropic gives unlimited access to its models for classified military use. Now, during tense negotiations, Hegseth reportedly threatened to invoke the US Defense Production Act, which apparently is a 1950 law which allows the US president to incentivize the domestic industrial base to expand the production and supply of critical materials and goods in the interests of national defense. The Pentagon has also reportedly threatened to mark Anthropic as a supply chain risk. Anthropic has so far refused to bow to the US government's demands, with the CEO Dario Amodei issuing a statement Thursday expressing his concern that in some cases AI could undermine rather than defend democratic values. He added that Anthropic could not, quote, in good conscience accede to the US government requests. Amodei has previously voiced concerns about the use of AI, especially in autonomous warfare, telling a New York Times podcast earlier this month that, quote, we need in some ways to be protected against AI. Well, Pentagon official Emil Michael, the US Undersecretary of War, wrote on X on Thursday that the Anthropic CEO wanted, quote, nothing more than to try to personally control the US military. Wow. He also called him a liar and accused him of having a, quote, God complex. The dispute threatens to spill over to other companies that the Pentagon works with. Officials have reportedly asked defense contractors to assess their reliance on Anthropic's AI services. If Anthropic was declared a supply chain risk, vendors such as Palantir, which uses Anthropic tools in its battle management platform Maven Smart system, would need to certify that it does not use the company's models. Hopefully we've explained what is a complicated story. Well, when asked about this dispute in an interview on CNBC on Wednesday, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang said he understood both the Pentagon's and the Anthropic point of view.
The Defense Department has the right to use the technology and use the products that they procure in the way that serves their needs. And obviously their needs are, it's the dependent of war. In the case of Anthropic, of course, they have the right to decide how they would like to market their products and what kind of use cases it could be used for. And so I think they both have their reasonable perspective, and however it gets worked out, this won't be Anthropic is not the only AI company in the world, and of course, the United States is not the only customer for any company in the world. And
I've got to say, the next story has provoked a fierce discussion off air. We've been talking non-stop about jobs.
I think it could be story of the week.
Well, I mean, it's in big, tough competition. There's lots of
I know.
deals.
I'm trying to write a piece about it as well. Why don't you tell everyone the story? It's amazing.
Shares and payments firm Block surged by 24% in extended trade. That's 24%, right? After the company announced plans to lay off almost half of its workforce. CEO Jack Dorsey pointed to AI, saying intelligence tools have, quote, changed what it means to build and run a company, and that within a year, most other companies will reach the same conclusion. So again, stepping on that landmine, I guess, around obsolescence of the workforce. And this is what we're seeing in terms of the numbers taken out of this company. Meantime, in competition for that top news story of the week, Netflix has announced it will rescind its offer for the studio and streaming assets of Warner Brothers Discovery after the WBD board signaled Paramount Skydance's latest bid for the whole of the group was a superior offer. Paramount's new offer of $31 a share came after Netflix granted a 7-day waiver for Warner Brothers to re-engage with Paramount for the company to, as co-CEO Ted Sarandos told CNBC, quote, put their money where their mouth is. Netflix then declined to raise its offer of $27.75 a share for WBD's studio and streaming assets, describing a deal to purchase them no longer being financially attractive. But no doubt that Paramount has fought tooth and nail for this deal.